Well, we're going to get into the third essay a little bit deeper now. The primary reading will be this short reading, well, kind of long actually, from the Heritage Foundation. It's going to be another one of those follow the money weeks. This organization gets the bulk of their money, lots of their money, from the fossil fuel industry. And they publish things that will allow the oil and gas and coal people to keep going. So each section has a remarkable tone. Don't worry about honesty. It's not about that. But in the state of climate science, no justification for extreme policies. Extreme policies. Any policy having something to do with climate change must be extreme. And the first word, hysteria. They're all crazy. The Obama administration and nearly every federal department and agency. So this is kind of fun because they're not even 3 lines into it. And let's look at that hysteria. That's what people do when they lose their minds. We first get linked to a 2010 article. I'll show you the way the link works here. And then you would click on the article there. And in that 2010 article, what you have is a recommendation by the Securities and Exchange Commission from 2010. And that would be then 6 years before the Heritage Foundation article was written, suggesting that companies have a policy that addresses climate change, right here. And there it is. A company should disclose the impact that business or legal developments related to climate change may have on its business. That's all. It's a recommendation. If you're going to invest in a multi-million-dollar company on the stock exchange, you should have as your business prospectus some kind of a statement about how climate change, regulation, etc. will influence your company. Now this is 2010. Let's go fast forward here, a little bit of research I've done. And when you get to 2019, look what the banks did in 2015. That's a year before this was written. And in the top part here, you see the Bank of England, 2015, issued strident warnings about stranded fossil assets. What they mean by that is that don't invest in billion-dollar coal furnaces or billion-dollar extraction platforms for oil because they may become stranded assets. And that was then. They don't want people investing. That's why coal is failing, because people realize, oh my God, why invest in coal, that multi-billion-dollar furnace, when nobody's going to be buying coal? It's too dirty, it's too expensive. Now you look at Australia, and in 2013, they say in Australia, our banks have climate policy. In 2019, they didn't have it. And then you look at this. Since 2013, 100 major banks have restricted coal lending or gotten out of the business altogether. So, going back here, and I'll click back on that footnote to get back to the home page, you can see that it's not hysteria. Not only that, it's a suggestion 6 years before this article was published in the Heritage Foundation, and it's backed up by real-life activity by banks. They're very careful. They don't want to invest in old energy if it becomes obsolete. I'll give you a little side note here. In India, it costs $35 to $40 a mega kilowatt hour for solar. Coal from India is like $55. And then imported coal is $70. That's why India last year spent 40 times more on renewable energy than it did on coal, because renewable energy costs less, and they don't want to build those expensive and huge coal furnaces if nobody's going to buy the coal, buy the energy from the coal, I should say. So there you go. That's a short lesson on this crazy article. Each section is going to be loaded with bias, real heavy-handed. So what I want you to do for this week is go through each section, the major ones, the consensus. You can see the bigger heading. And look for bias language. Look for how look for the argument they make. Ask yourself how that argument benefits the fossil fuel industry. You don't have to dig into the footnotes yet. This will be due on Wednesday. We'll dig into the footnotes after. Look at the next section, A Brief History of Global Climate Change and Where We Are Today. The big font. See what their basic argument is. Get their bias. Get their tone. Look at their graphs. Understand how that argument benefits the fossil fuel industry. Look at the next section. What does it tell us about that? Lots of subsections here. Climate models versus reality. No trends for extreme and frequent natural disasters. Sea ice, glaciers, ocean acidification. All these fun things. Look at what they're saying, what the basic argument is for that whole section, and ask yourself how it benefits the fossil fuel industry. And then finally, the last one, obviously, after saying nothing bad is happening, the last one, the high cost and negligible benefits of climate policy. They've convinced you that there's no need to do any of this stuff, negligible benefits, and they'll scare you, kind of like Trump did in his speech about the high costs. So again, look to the main idea, and you've got like 4 sections there. Look to the main, first of all, look for bias and tone. Read it very carefully. Read it broadly, like for the whole section, chunk it and say, what is their main argument? And answer what that argument does for the fossil fuel industry. So you've got a 3-part written response for each section. Doesn't have to be that long. Just a good paragraph that captures the bias. You can show that with keywords and phrases. Another brief handful of 3 or 4 sentences that talk about the argument, and then a final part about how that argument benefits the fossil fuel industry. This will take a few hours, but I think you'll get good at it, and you'll understand how they frame this. And all those people who listen to this are going to go on. This is for politicians. This is for conservative talk show radio. This is for that whole massive disinformation campaign. That way, they can say with authority, I was just reading a report from a think tank. I was just reading a report from a research foundation. Well, that think tank, that research foundation, is a heritage foundation. A foundation that gets millions and millions of dollars from oil and coal. I hope this helps you set up the first assignment due this Wednesday.